Hello, my name is Daniel Kluger. For this fall semester, I interned at the Durham Performing Arts Center. So an overview of the company. So the Durham Performing Arts Center is located in Durham, North Carolina. It opened in 2008. It is owned by the City of Durham, and it's managed by Nederlander and Professional Facilities Management. We host over 200 performances a year. These include Broadway, concert, comedy, and family shows. It's the #1 performing arts center in the region of the Triangle for 4 consecutive years as rated by the Triangle Business Journal, and annually places it in the top 5 theaters in the U.S. in attendance for theaters of its size. So a brief internship overview. So how I found the internship. I was actually interning at a finance firm over the summer and was looking for part-time work, and had a hidden passion for the arts, so I applied to do some part-time work at DPAC. I did not realize, though, that they have very few shows over the summer, and they had pretty much filled up all the work that they needed. I contacted DPAC when I hadn't heard back, and I spoke to the manager, who actually suggested I apply for an internship program. So I did that. I went in and met with the business manager, and they asked me to come in for the management intern position. Orientation was fairly informal. My manager sees more of as a learn-as-you-go kind of environment. He taught me the basic things that I need to do day to day, and then added in that projects would come along, and basically just have an open mind, ask questions when needed, and that basically gave me an overview that this wasn't your typical business internship. As far as the format was concerned, I worked right below the business manager, and then he works right underneath the general manager. I also reported to the office administrator just to do basic work around the office that needed help. It was myself and another person as a management intern, and then we had multiple marketing interns. So top learning objectives. So top 3 that I basically had was basically to develop an understanding of the different roles within the theater business and how they connect. I had seen many shows, but this was my first time really getting a behind-the-scenes look at the business side of it, the operations, and I wanted to see how all the pieces came together. I also wanted to use my analytical skills that I had learned through school to analyze their financial data, maybe find ways that they can increase profitability or give them information to help them make decisions. And then I lastly wanted to learn about the connection between pre-show management operations and basically what takes place during actual production. I also learned a lot actually about what happens after each show. So the basic idea here is, all the prep work that goes into a show, how much of that is carried over to what happens actually during the show. So how did I do at these learning objectives? I think for the first one, I gained a really good understanding of all the business roles. DPAC only doesn't have very many employees, and each one is tasked with a lot of responsibility. So I was able to, interact with a lot of different people and see how they all played into what the end product was. Specifically, I learned a lot of in-depth, obviously, on the business side. Since I was a finance major, my manager felt really comfortable giving me projects that revolved around that kind of finance work. So I saw a lot of stuff like that. In terms of the analytical skills, this came into play more towards the end in bigger projects, where I basically would go back and look at numbers and basically consolidate the information in a way that they could make decisions for the future. So I think I did a good amount of that, as I'll touch on later. And then as far as the connection between pre-show operations and during the show, I didn't see as much during the show as I would have liked to, but I did learn a lot about, how much planning goes in beforehand, and in this kind of business, how much of that actually ends up working and how you have to adjust. The before and after of a show is pretty incredible to watch, especially the Broadway performances, which actually do multiple shows. Most of them do about 8 performances, and they do a full residency. So to see everything that happens before that, and then trying to consolidate everything that happens after 8 consecutive Broadway shows, was pretty cool to see. Projects. So I can't really show examples of the projects because it takes a lot of data and numbers and money that I shouldn't really be sharing, but I can just kind of describe it to the best of my ability. So they keep an archive through an Excel document that basically keeps track of every number you can possibly think of, how much they paid performers, how much money they got in from merchandise, from food, from ticket sales, everything you can possibly find. So as new shows would come in, one of my roles was to look at that information and bring it into that sheet so they could keep track of all of it. The second project I did recently was going through and analyzing their food and beverage intake per show. A lot of the income that comes through these shows is merchandise, how much people eat and drink when they go there. So the general manager wanted to have an idea of what types of shows generated the most types of this revenue. So I went through the archive and found this information and analyzed it for them and simplified it in one document. The third project I did was basically a way for them to determine sellout numbers. One of the big things they report to these magazines like Polestar is how many sellouts they had each year. So there was a way I had to go through and basically simplify it so that people could basically enter in the sales and they could figure out if that show was considered a sellout based on the percentages that they determined to be a sellout. And then the last thing I did was a QuickBooks sponsor management system where we had sponsors for different aspects of the theater. Some sponsored specific areas and lounges, some were in books, things like that. So I basically created a QuickBooks system where they could invoice these sponsors quickly and have a database with all that information in it. So just general reflection, I learned a lot of new information about an industry I didn't know much about, but I was really curious about. It was a great learning experience and I learned a lot. More of it was day-to-day than past internships I've had where it was more project-based and, I give you this in a couple weeks, come back to me with this information. The environment was either, very relaxed and easygoing, or it was a last-minute crunch and everyone was losing their minds and working crazy hours. So it was pretty interesting to see the differences between the two. I saw people at their best and some people at their worst. I really liked the coworkers that I had. Very diverse and interesting people, very different than the people I'd worked with before. I'd walk down the hall and three marketing workers in their cubicles would be singing 3 different Broadway show songs just in their cubicle. It was kind of a fun, relaxed environment in that sense. Overall, it was a really fun experience, and being able to see everything that went into that kind of business, really has turned that into something I could definitely see myself doing in the future. Find something that it's a lot of work, but it's something that's really rewarding in the end. So next steps. So they made an indication, my manager, that there's a good chance in the next few months of being offered a full-time employment position, which would be great. But in the meantime, I'm also going to do my best to explore other possible options in the entertainment industry. Because like I said, this was something I had never done before. This is something that I kind of went in with no real expectations, and I came out. It was one of the more rewarding internships I've ever done. So yeah, that was it. Thank you very much.